The Grand Hunter's Lodge aboard Station Omega-9 was, as usual, filled with the galaxy's most insufferable braggarts. Not that I'm one to talk, I used to be the worst of them. Used to be, that was before. Well, that's why they're all here, isn't it? I, Zix-Thrak, the relentless, pride of the Enixian hunting clans, currently sit in what humans would call a therapist's armchair. Don't ask me how I know that, surrounded by the most dangerous predators this side of the Andromeda. My crystalline exoskeleton, once adorned with the trophies of 1,000 successful hunts, now sports nothing more threatening than a "Hello, my name is" badge. Oh, how the mighty have fallen. Tell us again. Greatest of hunters purrs KRZ seat, a felinian whose species would make Earth's tigers look like house cats. The sarcasm in his voice could corrode Durasteel. How did the legendary Zix-Thrak end up? Reformed. The gathered hunters leaned forward in their seats, mandibles clicking and tentacles writhing with anticipation. Some of them have heard this story before. It's become something of a cautionary tale in certain circles, but they never tire of it, probably because it makes them feel better about their own failures, first of all. I begin, adjusting my position in the chair, which, by the way, is ridiculously comfortable, another human invention I've grown embarrassingly fond of. You should know that everything you've heard about my reputation was true. 12 standard cycles, 217 worlds, over 1,000 successful hunts. I've stalked prey through the acid storms of Nexus VI, tracked quantum-shifting entities through the probability mazes of Schrödinger's world, and once spent 3 months in pure vacuum just to catch a space whale. A low murmur of appreciation ripples through the crowd. At least they still respect the old achievements, even if they mock what I've become. The Nixian hunting clans. I continue, watching my reflection in the polished chrome walls. Earned our reputation as the galaxy's apex predators through millennia of evolution and cultural refinement. Our crystalline bodies can withstand extreme temperatures and pressures. Our sensor arrays can detect the faintest electromagnetic signatures. Our neural networks can process targeting solutions faster than most species' combat computers. I pause for effect, another human trick I've picked up. In short, we were designed by nature and honed by technology to be perfect hunters. And I was the perfect specimen of our perfect species. A Mantidean in the back raises one of its scything arms. We've all heard the boasts, Zix-Thrak. Get to the humans. I shoot him what humans call a death glare, which is actually quite difficult when you have compound eyes. But I've been practicing. Patience, young one. Context is everything. You need to understand just how far I had to fall to learn my lesson. The gathered hunters settle back, a few ordering drinks from the automated servers. They know what's coming, but like witnesses to a starship crash, they can't look away. It was exactly 1 standard cycle ago, I say, my crystalline structure briefly flickering with remembered embarrassment. I had just finished hunting the ghost leopards of Proxima. I child's play really when I heard rumors about a species of deathworlders who had recently joined the galactic community. Humans, they called themselves. A collective shudder runs through the audience. Several hunters unconsciously touch their scars or missing appendages. Yes, now you all act so wise, I say, waving a crystalline appendage dismissively. But back then I thought, just like you once did, that they were just another species of clever prey, that their reputation was exaggerated, that their homeworld's high gravity and harsh conditions simply meant they would provide a more interesting challenge. I lean forward, my voice dropping to what humans call a stage whisper, which paradoxically is meant to be heard by everyone. I was about to learn just how wrong I was. And it all started with what the humans call a bad decision. The first warning sign should have been the betting pool. I continue, watching my audience's reactions. When I announced my intention to hunt humans, instead of the usual wagering on how quickly I'd succeed, they were betting on how spectacularly I'd fail. The pot reached 50,000 credits within an hour. A ripple of knowing laughter spreads through the lodge. I noticed several hunters discreetly checking their credit accounts, probably early investors in my humiliation. The Arcturian arms dealer, you all know the one, tentacles like data cables, terrible fashion sense, actually tried to sell me insurance. Insurance. Me. Triple coverage, he said, for dismemberment, psychological trauma, and most importantly, dignity restoration. I should have listened. But no. I just had to prove everyone wrong. I shift in my chair, my crystalline structure catching the light in a way that probably makes me look far more dramatic than intended. The research phase was interesting. Every species I interviewed had a different horror story about humans. The Vraks told me about watching a human survive 3 direct hits from a plasma rifle because, and I quote, They were too stubborn to die. The hive mind of Beta Centauri shared footage of a human outrunning one of their hunter drones. For fun. They called it jogging. Several hunters nod sympathetically. One of them, a shadow stalker from the Obsidian Nebula, actually whimpers. But did I listen? No. I did what any self-respecting apex predator would do. I completely ignored all advice and set course for their newest colony world, New Eden. The name alone should have been another warning. Only humans would be arrogant enough to name their world after their mythological paradise. I project a hologram from my memory crystals, showing the approach to New Eden. The planet looked innocent enough from orbit: green continents, blue oceans, white clouds. Standard class M world. Right? Wrong. The gravity was 1.1 standard Gs, practically a workout just standing still for most species. The atmosphere had enough oxygen to make a Peronian spontaneously combust. And the weather. By the void, the weather. The hologram shifts to show a massive storm system. They call these Tuesday on New Eden. Not class 5 atmospheric disturbance or life-threatening weather event, just Tuesday. Should have turned back right then. But no, I had to be clever. I selected what I thought was the perfect hunting ground, a small settlement on the edge of something they called a national park, about 40 human dwellings. Primitive construction methods, they still used processed tree carcasses they call lumber, and minimal defensive capabilities. Also, I thought, the hologram zooms in on the settlement. Look at this: no energy shields, no automated defense turrets. Not even a basic neural disruptor field. Just some flimsy fencing and what appeared to be primitive monitoring devices. I actually logged in my hunt journal, and I quote myself here: these humans are practically begging to be hunted. A chorus of groans fills the lodge. Everyone knows what happens to hunters who underestimate their prey. I spent 3 days observing their patterns. They seemed to follow predictable routines, leaving their dwellings at dawn, returning at dusk, gathering in central locations for communal activities. Some would venture into the wilderness with basic tools and return with local flora or fauna. Primitive hunter-gatherers, I thought. Nothing I haven't dealt with before. I paused to accept a glass of Centaurian brandy from a server bot. But there were oddities. Things I dismissed at the time but now haunt my nightmares. Like how they would voluntarily engage in high-intensity physical activity for no apparent reason. They called it CrossFit Oregon. How they would intentionally expose themselves to extreme heat in small wooden chambers, saunas apparently. Who does that? The children were the most disturbing. I watched one small human fall from a considerable height, impact the ground with enough force to shatter a Regelian's exoskeleton, then immediately get up and continue what they called playing their parents' response. Walk it off. Kiddo, walk it off. As if physical trauma was just an inconvenience. The hologram shifts again, showing a human dwelling at night. Finally, I selected my target, a single dwelling on the outskirts of the settlement. 2 adult humans, no offspring, minimal security. I had my entry route planned, my backup plans prepared, and my trophy case already cleared for what I assumed would be an impressive addition to my collection. I let out what humans call a bitter laugh. You know what they say about assumptions in this business. They're usually your last mistake. But there I was, the galaxy's greatest hunter, about to attempt what I thought would be a simple extraction and elimination of primitive prey. My crystalline structure dims slightly with embarrassment. I didn't even bother with my high-end hunting gear. Just basic stealth field, standard paralysis darts, and a ceremonial blade. Because surely I wouldn't need anything more sophisticated for such simple prey. The gathered hunters are leaning forward now, mandibles clicking and tentacles twitching with anticipation. They know what's coming next. And that, my fellow hunters, is how I found myself creeping toward a human dwelling on what they call a Thursday night, about to learn exactly why humans are classified as Deathworld apex predators. And why their warning signs say do not feed the bears instead of beware of bears. The distinction, as I was about to discover, is significant. The approach was perfect. I continue, my crystalline form flickering with the memory. Silent night, cloud cover, and my stealth field was operating at peak efficiency. I had studied their primitive alarm systems, simple motion sensors, and something they call ring cameras, child's play to avoid. The gathered hunters lean in closer. A Voraxian actually pulls out a recording device, probably for blackmail purposes. My first hint that something was wrong should have been the garden gnome. Yes, you heard that correctly, a garden gnome. A small decorative statue depicting a diminutive humanoid with a pointed hat. Completely harmless, right? Wrong. I project a hologram of the infamous gnome. I was 3 steps into their yard when this innocent-looking decoration swiveled its head 180 degrees and shot me with what I later learned was called bear spray. Do you know what bear spray is? It's a weaponized irritant humans created to deter creatures that can shred battle armor with their claws. And they keep it in their lawn ornaments. A collective wince ripples through the audience. But that was just the beginning. Stumbling backward from the bear spray, I triggered what they called a motion-activated sprinkler. Now, you might think, oh, water, how terrible, I mimic a mocking tone. But no, this wasn't water. This was a mixture of water and something called ghost pepper extract. Do you know what a ghost pepper is? It's a plant humans cultivate for fun because it causes pain. So there I am, the galaxy's most feared predator, doing what humans call the spicy dance across their lawn, when I back into something that goes click. Now, in my extensive hunting experience, click is never a good sound. I pause for dramatic effect, noting with satisfaction that even the most hardened hunters are fully engaged. The next thing I know, I'm hanging upside down in a net made of something called paracord. Apparently, it's what humans use when they need to suspend 1,000-pound objects. But here's the truly terrifying part. This wasn't even meant for me. This was their standard bear deterrent system. They set these traps for local wildlife. And that's when I heard it, the sound that still haunts my dreams. A screen door creaking open, followed by a human voice saying the most terrifying words in the galaxy. Honey, get my phone. You're going to want to see this. The hologram shifts to show a tall human female in what I now know is called pajama pants and a shirt that reads I flexed and the sleeves fell off. This, my fellow hunters, was Ranger Thompson. Not that I knew it at the time. I just knew I was hanging upside down, covered in various forms of chemical warfare, facing a human who looked far too amused for someone discovering an alien predator in their yard. She didn't scream. She didn't run. She just took pictures. With her phone later, I learned these pictures went viral on something called Reddit, but what happened next was worse. I shudder, causing my crystalline structure to chime softly. She called her colleagues. Not the military. Not the Planetary Defense Force. Her colleagues from the Parks and Wildlife Service. Because, as she put it, and I quote, this is clearly an exotic species situation, and I ain't doing that paperwork alone. Within 20 minutes, my absolute stealth mission had turned into what humans call a party. 3 more rangers showed up, all in various states of casual dress, carrying what they called coffee, a stimulant beverage that would be classified as a controlled substance on most worlds. One of them, a male human wearing what I later learned was called a kiss the cook apron over his uniform, actually brought snacks. Snacks. To a potentially lethal alien encounter. The hologram shows the gathering of rangers, all casually discussing their unexpected visitor while eating something called nachos. Ranger Thompson, and I'll never forget this, actually pulled up a lawn chair, opened something called a beer, and started filling out forms. Let's see, she said. Unauthorized exotic species introduction. Failure to submit proper quarantine documentation. Violation of protected wildlife corridor. Hunting without a license. She looked up at me and asked, do you have any idea how much paperwork you've just created? I tried to maintain my dignity. Really, I did. I announced in my most menacing voice that I was Zixthrak, the relentless, terror of 12 systems, collector of countless trophies. Ranger Thompson just nodded and added failure to properly identify self to park authorities to her list. Several hunters are actually crying with laughter now. A mantadine in the back has fallen off its perch. But the true horror came when she made a call to someone she referred to as the wildlife rehabilitation specialist. I distinctly remember her words. Hey, Mike, remember how you said you'd never seen anything you couldn't rehabilitate? Well, buddy, Christmas came early this year. I project the final hologram of that night, me, still hanging upside down, surrounded by bemused rangers, while Ranger Thompson holds up a tablet showing various regulations about the proper handling of non-native species. Do you know what's worse than being hunted? Being classified as an invasive species requiring rehabilitation. They didn't even consider me a predator. I was, in their words, just another example of irresponsible exotic pet release, the ultimate insult to a Nixian hunter. As they were preparing to process me, I managed to activate my emergency teleport beacon. The last thing I heard was Ranger Thompson saying, "Hey, Dobby, it's like when the shelter cats escape. Don't worry, they always come back when they're hungry." I take another sip of my brandy. She wasn't wrong about that last part. But that's a story for later. The point is, I had just experienced my first encounter with humans, and I had failed to account for one crucial detail on a death world. Everything is a predator, even their lawn ornaments. But this wasn't the end. Oh no, this was just the beginning of my education about humans. Because you see, my hasty teleport didn't take me far enough. I was still on New Eden, and now I had something far worse than hunters on my trail. I had concerned wildlife management officials who wanted to help me. Let me tell you something about human tracking methods, I say, absently rubbing one of my crystalline appendages where the ghost pepper residue had left a permanent discoloration. We Nixians have sophisticated sensor arrays that can detect the slightest electromagnetic disturbance. The humans, they look at dirt. And somehow that's more effective. The hologram shows a series of footprints, my footprints being examined by Ranger Thompson and her team. See these crystalline fragments, she said, pointing at what I thought was an impossibly faint trail. Our friends leaving a trail of glitter. It's like a fairy with a drinking problem threw up in the woods. That was the moment I realized I had severely miscalculated. My crystalline structure, usually perfect for blending into any environment, was literally leaving a trail that a human child could follow. But surely, I thought, I could outpace them. After all, I can move at speeds that would tear most species apart. So I ran, and ran, and ran, and they walked, just walked, while drinking their coffee and discussing something called fantasy football. A Pyrrhonian hunter raises a fiery appendage. But how did they keep up? Because, my combustible friend, humans are what they call persistence hunters. They don't need to be faster than you. They just need to keep going longer than you can. Do you know what they call walking until your prey collapses from exhaustion? They call it hiking. They do it for fun. The hologram shifts to show various scenes from my attempted escape. Hour 1, I'm feeling confident, moving at maximum speed through the wilderness. I hear Ranger Thompson on her communication device. Yeah, heading north-northwest. Probably trying to reach the ridge. Want to meet us at the coffee shop up there? Great, get me my usual. Hour 3, I'm starting to tire, but surely they've given up. Then I hear them discussing lunch plans. Lunch plans. While hunting an apex predator. Hour 6, I'm hiding in a tree, trying to recover some energy, when I hear one of them say, "Oh look, more alien glitter. Must be getting tired, the trail's getting sloppier. Better call ahead to the rehabilitation center." I pause to order another drink. But the worst part, the absolute worst part, they turned it into a community event. They had something called a Facebook group where they posted updates about the lost space pet. The hologram shows social media posts with embarrassingly clear photos of me trying to hide in various locations. Spotted the glitter alien near Johnson's Creek. Keep your bird feeders inside, I quote bitterly. Remember, don't feed it. It probably has special dietary needs. Anyone lost a crystalline space creature. Very pretty, seems confused, keeps trying to hide in trees, but doesn't realize it sparkles. Several hunters are now openly howling with laughter. By hour 12, I had civilians joining the search. Not with weapons, oh no, with snacks and cameras. They treated it like something called a Pokemon Go event. One human child spotted me and yelled, "Mum." I found the space twilight vampire. I tried everything in my hunter's arsenal. Stealth field. They followed the trail of displaced dewdrops on spider webs. Thermal dampening. They tracked my cold spots with something called a weather app, electronic countermeasures. They didn't even notice because they were using paper maps and compasses. The hologram shows me attempting to cross a river. This was my lowest point. I thought water would hide my trail. Instead, I learned about something humans call catch and release fishing. Do you know how humiliating it is to be accidentally caught by a human who then apologizes because they were only licensed for trout? But the true breaking point came when they started using drones. Not military drones, not hunting drones, something called nature photography drones. They were making a documentary. There I was, the galaxy's most feared predator, being filmed for something called National Geographic, Invasive Species Special. I project the final moments of my freedom. Ranger Thompson's voice over a primitive amplification device. Attention, sparkly space friend. We have the entire area surrounded by wildlife photographers, 3 Boy Scout troops, and a meetup group of bird watchers. Please remember that harming endangered local species is a Class 3 felony, and your glitter is definitely affecting the ecosystem. Come down from there and we can discuss rehabilitation options. The final insult. They didn't even need to capture me. They just waited until I was too exhausted to continue. Do you know what they call that strategy? Letting it tire itself out like I was some sort of temperamental toddler. When I finally collapsed, Ranger Thompson just sat down next to me, offered me something called a Gatorade, and started explaining the local wildlife regulations. Look, she said, I get it. New planet, exciting prey, very tempting. But we have procedures for this. Next time. Just fill out the hunting permit application like everyone else. The hologram fades as I slump deeper into my chair. That's when I learned the most terrifying truth about humans. They don't just hunt, they bureaucratize. They don't eliminate threats, they regulate them. Why destroy an apex predator when you can rehabilitate it and make it fill out paperwork? But you think this was the end of my humiliation? Oh no, this was just the prelude to what I now call the incident at the Wildlife Rehabilitation Center, or, as the humans called it, Operation Glitter Guardian. The Wildlife Rehabilitation Center, I say, my crystalline structure dimming with remembered shame, turned out to be my final undoing. Not because of their security measures, mind you. No, my downfall came from something far more insidious: human snack food. But the gathered hunters exchange confused glances. A Voraxian actually drops its hunting trophy in surprise, specifically something called Doritos. After a day of being tracked through the wilderness, I was exhausted, hungry, and my judgment was impaired. I detected an odd chemical signature, artificial flavoring. They call it wafting from an open window. The scent was intriguing. The hologram shows the fateful scene: the rehabilitation center's break room window, a carefully arranged trail of orange triangular objects leading inside. I know what you're thinking. The galaxy's greatest hunter, felled by processed corn chips. But have you tried Doritos? No. Then you can't judge me. The humans engineered them to be irresistible. They're basically chemical warfare in snack form. So there I was, following this trail like a primitive beast, when I heard Ranger Thompson's voice. Works every time. Even space predators can't resist nacho cheese flavor. The hologram shifts to show me, covered in orange dust, surrounded by empty bags, as the rehabilitation center staff calmly walked in. That's when I got the talk. Not about being a dangerous predator. Not about violating territorial sovereignty. No. I got a lecture about proper diet and the importance of making healthy choices. The colony's chief xenobiologist actually used the phrase "you are what you eat" while showing me a food pyramid. But the true revelation came during my intake interview. Ranger Thompson sat across from me, reviewing my case file, and said something that changed my entire perspective on humans. She said, it's kind of adorable that you thought you were hunting us. That's like a house cat thinking it's hunting its owner. The hologram shows the interview room, where various human officials had gathered. They proceeded to explain, very patiently, that humans are what they call generalist apex predators. They didn't evolve to be the fastest, strongest, or most technologically advanced. They evolved to be the most adaptable. They can eat almost anything, survive almost anywhere, and turn almost anything into a tool or weapon. Even their lawn ornaments, as I had learned. And then came their offer. Instead of punishment, they proposed rehabilitation. Their reasoning: you clearly have skills that could be put to better use. How would you like to help us with our invasive species problem? When I pointed out that I was the Zixthrak, terror of 12 systems, they just nodded and added experience with interstellar ecosystem management to my qualifications. They weren't impressed by my hunting prowess, they were critiquing my methodology. The hologram shows my first day of rehabilitation, me wearing what humans call a volunteer vest, while Ranger Thompson explains proper wildlife handling procedures. The final insult. They made me take an online course in ethical conservation practices. I, who had hunted quantum-shifting entities, had to pass a multiple-choice test about proper catch and release techniques. And do you know what's worse? I actually found it interesting. I gesture to my "Hello, my name is" badge. And that's how the galaxy's most feared predator became a certified wildlife management consultant. Because, as it turns out, humans don't want to eliminate their predators, they want to employ them. So here I am. I gesture around the hunting lodge with a crystalline appendage that now sports a professional name tag reading Wildlife Management Specialist, living proof that the galaxy's most dangerous predator isn't the one with the most advanced hunting capabilities. It's the one that turns its predators into employees. The gathered hunters shift uncomfortably in their seats. Several are quietly deleting Earth future hunting ground from their destination logs. But you want to know the real cosmic joke? I lean forward, lowering my voice. I actually have humans living with me now. They call themselves my roommates. Originally, they were assigned to monitor my rehabilitation, but somewhere along the way, I just got used to them. I project one final hologram: my apartment, where 2 human graduate students are sprawled on the couch, surrounded by research papers and empty coffee cups. They're working on their PhDs in xenobiology. Do you know what that means? I'm not keeping them, they're studying me. And the worst part, I'm helping them. Voluntarily, I'm literally assisting in research about why my species' hunting techniques are, and I quote, hilariously overcomplicated. Last week, one of them actually patted my crystalline structure and said who's a good research subject, and I liked it. The lodge has gone completely silent. Even the automated servers seem to be moving more quietly. So let me give you all some free consulting advice, I say, standing up and straightening my professional credentials. If you're thinking about hunting humans, don't. Best case scenario, you end up with a day job and an addiction to processed snack foods. Worst case? Well, let's just say there's a reason humans have a special filing cabinet labeled former predators, now working in conservation. I start walking toward the exit, then pause. Oh. And one more thing. Remember how this all started because I thought their technology was primitive. They just approved my grant proposal to study advanced crystalline-based catch and release techniques. I'm presenting at their conservation conference next month. The title of my talk, From Hunter to Hunter, a case study in human-led rehabilitation. Now, if you'll excuse me, it's my turn to buy the Doritos, and believe me, you do not want to keep humans waiting for snack time.